A desert planet with twin suns.
Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form?
Use my knowledge. Much to learn, you still have.
Welcome back to Twin Sun Talks, folks. I'm your host, Jonah Liu. Thank you so much for listening, and welcome to our 8th edition of our species profiles. They are no longer prominent. These are very obscure Star Wars species, I'm not going to lie, but I kind of committed to doing 10 of these to myself, and we're sticking to it. So this is number 8. We got 2 more. We should finish up this series sometime over the summer. And yeah, I hope that y'all are enjoying it. It is kind of fun. I just do a quick little profile on each of these species. Nothing too in-depth, just saying like where they're from, what language they speak, any defining characteristics that they may have, and some prominent members that you can see in either the shows or the movies. So, without further ado, let's dive into ARC Trooper training.
Gentlemen, who wants to be an ARC Trooper? I do, sir!
So in this episode, we're going to be going through Besalisks, Thalathians, Umbarans, Dugs, Devaronians, and Kosians. And if you're like, I have no idea what any of those are, then that would make sense. Because honestly, ever since volume 3 of this, we've been diving into some less and less prominent species. So these are all very much background species, but I still think that they're interesting enough to cover. We're starting off with Besalisks. They are native to the planet of Ojam, and they speak Basic. They have brown or green skin, and they have very bony crests on their skull. And they have 4 arms, which is probably their most distinct characterizing trait. And members of the species include Jedi General Pong Krell, who we see in the Umbara arc of the Clone Wars. Speaking of Umbarans, we're going to be talking about them a little bit more later. And then there's also Dexter Jester, who is the diner owner that we meet in Attack of the Clones, who kind of helps Obi-Wan figure out where the saber dart that Zam Wessel gets shot with is from. And so kind of helps him point in the direction of Kamino. But yeah, so obviously we see that they could be different builds. They could either be kind of chubby like Dexter, or they could be really fit like General Krell. And yeah, I find them pretty interesting, and that's about all that I have about them, though. There's not too much information other than the fact that they look kind of cool and they have 4 arms. And Krell was very cool because he had like dual-wielding, double-sided lightsabers. Pretty dope character, even though he was kind of a jerk. Next up, we have Thalathians. They are native to the planet of Tholoth, and they speak Basic. They are characterized by bluish skin and scaled headcaps with protruding tendrils. They aged far slower than most other sentient beings. And members of the species include Adigalia and Stasali. And an interesting tidbit about this is that Stasali was originally supposed to be the same character as Adigalia, because they're both the same species, but the actress changed between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, so George Lucas decided to make her a completely different character. And so we see Adigalia featured in both Attack of the Clones as well as, I think, maybe in The Phantom Menace as well. She's also featured in the Clone Wars, where she meets her demise. But Stasali is alive during Revenge of the Sith and gets shot down during Order 66 by BARC troopers on the planet Saleucami, I believe. Could be wrong, but I'm 90% sure that that's correct. By Commander Neo. Sad stuff indeed. Next up, we have Umbarans, which are really, really interesting. They're native to the shadow world of Umbara. They speak Umbarese, but they were capable of speaking Basic. They were also known as the Shadow People, and their skin had kind of a pale blue tint to it. They were able to see in the ultraviolet spectrum, which helped because their world was so shadowy and dark. They had a society organized into a caste system with extremely advanced technology, as you can see in the Clone Wars arc surrounding that planet. They were infamous for their ability to manipulate other people, which gave them a rumored reputation of having mind control. And like I said, Umbara was a part of a Strategic Republic invasion during the Clone Wars, which is honestly one of my favorite arcs in the entire show. It goes in depth into the clones and kind of their relationships with each other and their relationships with their Jedi generals. It's absolutely fantastic. 10 for 10. Would recommend watching it if you haven't already. And members of the species include Sly Moore, who was a senator who was kind of in Palpatine's inner circle in the latter days of the Clone Wars, and her predecessor, Senator Medici, who was murdered during the Clone Wars. That was kind of the topic of a murder mystery episode of the Clone Wars. Next up, we have Dugs, who are native to the planet of Malastare. They speak Basic, although we see one of them speaking, I think, Huttese, but I'm not entirely sure. They are characterized by long snouts, and they also use their fore limbs to walk on. So not 4 is in the number, 4 is in their front limbs. So basically, it would be like if we humans used our arms instead of our legs to walk. But that was a whole conversation with my episode with Scott about whether or not it was for F-O-R-E or for F-O-U-R. We go into important stuff on this podcast, you know. They were ruled by the Dug Council and traditionally tormented by monsters called Zillobeasts that roamed the planet of Malastare and were nearly driven to extinction. They were primarily known for mining fuel, being semi-subservient to the colonizers of the Grand Protectorate who colonized the world of Malastare to kind of capitalize on its rich fuel resources. Members of the species include Sebulba, who is one of the pod racers, the main pod racer in The Phantom Menace, who's kind of like the reigning champion who everyone expects to win, and then Anakin ends up upsetting him. And then we also have the head of the Dugs during the Clone Wars during the Zillobeast arc, named Naka Urus. Kind of a jerk, but also his motivations were pretty understandable. Next up, we have Devaronians. They were native to the planet of Devaron, which was a jungle planet. They speak Basic and Devaronese. They were characterized by pink, red, or green skin, along with 2 protrusive horns and pointed ears. I should note that only the males have the horns. They kind of look like devils almost. There's one that's very prominently featured in the iconic shot going through Mos Eisley. The females had full heads of hair and kind of little bumps on their forehead, but no protrusive horns. They had a matriarchal society, so the females were the dominant gender in their society. They had fire-resistant skin and 2 livers, which they used to cleanse their bodies of toxins. And they had high rates of force sensitivity, but no established force-based religion or group within their species. So the Jedi built the Temple of Edith on Devaron to train force sensitives there, and most of their students were females due to the fact that they ran a matriarchal society, and most of the males of the species went out into the galaxy to wander the stars, basically. And members of the species include Sicatro Vizago, who was a major side character in the Star Wars Rebels show, as well as Berg, who was part of the mercenary team in The Mandalorian Season 1, led by Mayfeld, to set free one of the prisoners on board the New Republic transport. It was a cool episode. But yeah, so Berg was the Devaronian in that crew. Next up, we have Kosians, who are native to the planet of Kosia. They speak Basic and Kosian. They were reptilian sentients with an abnormally long lifespan of up to 200 years. And their skin tended to be a pale green color, and they were characterized by having beaked mouths and long tails. Members of the species include Terra Sanube. He's the only really prominent member of the species that we see, and he is the old kind of ancient Jedi master that Ahsoka goes to help find her lightsaber whenever it gets stolen from her, and he has a very extensive knowledge of the Coruscant underworld. He served on the Jedi High Council for a time, and was a member of the Order from the High Republic era until the Clone Wars era, where we get to see him obviously during the Clone Wars show. And fun fact about their language, Kosian, it was kind of like birds chirping, which kind of meshed with the flora and fauna of their homeworld of Kosia. So just a fun little fact there. But that's about all that I have for this episode, but this wouldn't be a proper episode if I didn't leave you with just a little bit more. So I mentioned before that the Dug Council was ruled, or that the Dugs were ruled by the Dug Council. And the Dug Council was headed by a Dug holding the title of Doge. And I find that rather humorous because Doge is also the name of a meme featuring a Shiba Inu with colorful Comic Sans text, which represent a sort of externalized personal monologue written deliberately in broken English. And yes, I just explained a meme to y'all during my more, so you can do something with that. I don't know. But yeah, that's about all that I have. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram at Twin Sun Talks. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, Twin Sun Talks Podcast. Follow us on streaming platforms, wherever you get your podcast, Twin Sun Talks. And go back and listen to my roadmap through Rebels with Caleb Oliphant if you haven't already. That was my April edition of The Ability to Speak Does Not Make You Intelligent. It was a really fantastic episode. And if you're trying to get into Star Wars Rebels and want kind of a more streamlined way to watch it, then go ahead and listen to that. And yeah, that's about all that I have. You taking your first steps into a larger world. May the Force be with you, and I will see y'all in the next episode. Bye, friends.